This is the AI Assisted Organization podcast, hosted by myself, Piers and my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Aalok Shukla. So we're a bit late this week, aren't we? Because we've been so busy on working with clients and various things.
Indeed, but it means there's more time for updates. So there's a lot of more new stuff to come
we've
out
squeezed
this week.
some more news in. So as usual, we're going to cover some artificial intelligence related news that relates to business as opposed to just general news as well, because there's so much that the pace of this news, we say every week, don't we? And you see this a lot, that, you know, this has been a hectic week, but it's just constant. It's unbelievable. And then we're going to focus on the theme this week, as well as our usual Implement AI updates. The theme is going to be which large language model, and you might think of that as a chatbot, depending how much you use it. Which one do you use? There are more of them. They've been announced all the time. We're going to talk about Google and their announcement in a moment, which has been quite interesting, about whether they faking it until they make it, which is quite unbelievable when you think about it. We're talking about Google here. And the news for us really this week, got a bit of updates. We haven't really done much too exciting, just been working. But we received a grant from 11 Labs. So you may, if you followed our podcast, you'll know that quite a few times our AI of the week has been 11 Labs, which is a fantastic, it's kind of text to speech. Now they're going, that's getting almost like real-time audio. You're getting very close to, I've said this a few times, to real-time voice as a new interface. So that's really exciting for us. So we get quite a lot of ability to access technology. So let's get on to the news. So it's been going on for a few weeks now, but it is Google Gemini. So we didn't really cover it in the last pod. I may have mentioned it. But
you've been saying for months.
I've been saying for months. I've been saying that Google Gemini is coming, multimodal's coming, and then it kind of arrived, sort of. Now, if you haven't followed the news, you may have seen the demos, there were various things leaked before they announced it. But just over a week ago, they announced Google Gemini. Now, let's not forget, right? 12 months ago, none of this stuff existed. So the fact we're now talking about, multimodal intelligence is insane in its own right. But Google have always been a little bit behind the curve, haven't they, Aalok? So Google Bard was launched. People weren't that impressed with it. ChatGPT, I'm going to talk about quite a few others today as well.
Well,
in our theme.
They just care about AdWords.
Yeah. So, they've been trying to work out how do we integrate this into our, enormous cash machine,
money printing model.
Yeah, without cannibalizing it. So, but they've kind of realized now that they have to, get on our proverbial ship leaving the harbor, or they're going to be left behind. And what they've done is they've launched Google Gemini. So there's 3 models. There's one which is Nano, which will work on a small device like a phone. And it's going to be on their new phones as well. Some of I don't use Google phones, but it's going to be on the Android devices. And then the Pixels. And then they've launched Pro, which is the one that's now working within Google Bard. And the big one, the really clever one's Ultra. So they announced some... They announced it. They have some great demos of talking to the thing, understood drawings, pictures, games.
It was a live video.
Wow. Was it?
What the guy was doing hand signals. Well, they showed a video where he was like showing hand signals and playing rock, paper, scissors.
Sleight of hand.
Yeah, sleight of hand. Like which hand is the coin underneath and all this kind of stuff. And it looked amazing.
But they've been under pressure to ship something and get it out of the door, which they've kind of done. And then they had a lot of comparisons about how does it compare to, GPT-4 or 3.5? And they were saying it's better. Now, when you look at the details, and I'm not going to go into this huge detail because there's lots of news on the internet, you can go read if you want to, but they weren't really comparing against GPT-4 Turbo. And the Ultra model, which they were using as the comparator, isn't available yet. It's probably going to be available, end of Q1 next year if we're lucky. So there's a bit of smoke and mirrors there.
And the video wasn't live.
And the video, exactly. Let's come back to that. And the video wasn't live. It was edited. It was, they were kind of training it.
Heavily prompt engineering.
Yeah, they were training it. They were prompting it. They were showing it things in advance and then asking the questions. So it was quite likely to get it right. However, let's remember, this technology is going to change the world, right? That's why we're here. And none of this was available too long ago. Now, the thing about Gemini is supposed to be multi-modal. It's been built as a multimodal platform, whereas the OpenAI platform, they've combined, ChatGPT-4 with DALL-E and various other sort of foundational models to have that kind of multimodal front end, but it's not technically a ground up multimodal model. So very exciting. And I'm sure, when Ultra's launched, it'll get there in the end. So Google Gemini, if you haven't used it yet, you can go and have a look at Bard and start using it because it is pretty good. I mean, and the internet's gone mad about it all being fake, but I think they're missing the point, right? They're missing the point. This stuff is game changers.
No. But you know what? A good video I saw was where someone actually made a video using GPT-4, and it was a live video where it was feeding it screenshots, and it literally did some parts of the demo, and GPT-4 did it. So he was talking to it, and it was saying, "What do you think I'm doing?" And it's like, "You're playing a game, rock paper scissors." It did all that stuff. So GPT-4 Vision can do that, but the power is incredible. And I think the fact that those three sizes of models, I'm going to come back to that in the second part of this, where we're going to which LLMs to use, because this is a very key point now coming.
Let's move on though. So again, we always sort of talk about, copyright and various lawsuits, because it is going to be important for law. And I'm an ex-lawyer and I know how slow the law can be, but it's important for law and regulations to catch up with the technology. So you're now seeing that Getty and Getty Images, if you use stock images, they've issued a lawsuit against Stability AI, and it's quite interesting actually. You see some of the when you create an image in the stability models, you'll see that sometimes in the image that the AI has created, it puts the Getty Images watermark. So they're saying, "Well, hang on a minute,
really?
Yeah, it's nuts." So it's not going to help them in court, is it? Let's face it, when a barrister holds that up, but essentially, they're saying, look, you're training your technology on our image stock, and we should be paid for that. Now, my personal view is the law will work itself out. I think there's a public interest in being able to use this technology. So as a user, if you're a business owner, it doesn't really concern you. It's more like the record labels fighting with Apple Music and Spotify about who gets paid what. We as the users, we're going to have access to technology. It's for them to work out what the economics are and how they're shared out. So let's move on from that. Now, Meta have launched, it's Imagine by Meta. So everyone's trying to outdo each other on their various launches. Well, they've rolled out a new sort of generative AI experience, if you want to call it that, which it creates images by describing them in natural language. So a lot of the kind of image generators, you have to use sort of particular prompts, and a Mid-Journey can be quite technical, not particularly good when you're trying to use natural language. So it's a bit like DALL-E 3 and Mid-Journey and the other ones, but it's powered by Meta's EMU image generation model. And this does create very high resolution images. So, the faster we move towards natural language, the better. So that's an interesting launch from Meta. And Meta is still, and we're going to talk about the law as well in a moment, EU, that the fact that Meta's open source may be an advantage to them. Now, on the models, we're going to talk about models a bit later, but Stability LM Zephyr 3B. And when you say 3B or 7B, usually it means 3 billion parameters. So these are small models. So some of the new models like Amazon are trillion parameters, right? So this is like 3 billion. So it's small in comparison. But what that means, though, you can deploy this on edge devices, even IoT devices, watches, phones. And that's where you really do want this technology. You want it on the move, don't you, on the go? And you want it always on.
Intelligence everywhere.
Exactly. You want intelligence in everything. So you're seeing this in Google Gemini Nano on devices and in Pixel phones we mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
This is another one of those models as well. So you're going to see more and more of these small models launched for deployment on, and they're not going to be as good, but they're going to be good enough to do what you need to do on that particular device.
And no internet's needed for these.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It'll be always on. So some of these things, talk about how AI can change the world. You can have devices in the middle of nowhere where there is no Wi-Fi, there is no internet connectivity, with access to technology. So you'll see that Emad at Stability, he's very much trying to get an iPad, which or some kind of device in the hands of every school child in Africa, for example. With one of these models working on it, where there's internet connectivity or not. So imagine the power of that. So it is actually quite important. I think one of the really big news, going back to law and regulation, is the EU have announced it's not law yet, but I mean, it's amazing to see the EU actually move this quickly. I've never seen the EU move this quickly, even moving faster than the US.
Leaders in regulation, we're not necessarily in actually helping progress the world. But
I think regulations they have to start somewhere. It'll probably find the water level at some point in time. But I'm not going to go through all the detail because there's quite a lot of it. But essentially, what they're doing, if you try to summarize it, is they're kind of applying different regulations, different rules, a different sort of the depth of regulation based on the potential risk of the artificial intelligence. So if you've got some artificial intelligence which is it can make its own decisions and it's sitting in some tank, right? Then they want to know a lot about it, how it works. They want you to know how it works as well, and you've got to basically file a lot of information about that technology with the regulator, to general purpose ones where there's no massive particular risk to use or society at large. But what they do want, though, seem to want, which is interesting when you talk about intelligence, is they want the people building these models to understand how they work. Now, that's interesting. You might think they always do, but sometimes these large language models do things, and the people that build them don't quite understand how they did them, like suddenly learn a new language.
But I was reading a nice post by Andre Karpathy. He's a brilliant AI researcher. He was working on an autopilot before, and he's working at OpenAI. And he was talking about how people think that hallucination is basically an error. And he was saying that actually all the LLMs do all day is basically dream. So they're dreaming and remembering the world, all the information in the hazy states, and whatever you type brings out the dream. And it's just if you didn't like the dream, then that's the thing. So the thing is, they're so complex, these systems. I just think that they just rushed in too fast, and they're trying to celebrate. If you look at some of their Twitter posts and stuff like that, it's honestly quite comical because they're trying to pat themselves on the back about this, but before they've actually understood everything fully.
It'll have to be adjusted. You might find that it's adjusted before it's actually enacted. So they've got a list of prohibitions. So things are like, autonomous devices or autonomous weapons, essentially. Things like using remote biometric identification. So this is used by governments like China, for example, to sort of manage people and where they are and how they're behaving. So they're kind of actually prohibiting some uses of AI, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, but Amazon's recognition does that.
But it's available. You just can't use it willy-nilly, sitting in a CCTV camera in Piccadilly Circus. So that's what so I think some of it they've kind of got right, but there are some grey areas where, and one of the big ones is that they're regulating the closed source, so the proprietary models. And what's interesting for companies like Meta, I mentioned it earlier, is that if you're open source, some of this regulation may not apply, which is interesting, isn't it? Because it still does the same thing. So I don't fully understand the logic behind that.
Actually, it will do more. It will do more. The open source models have not been red teamed, so that they actually have all the capabilities. So if you look at some of the earlier OpenAI papers with GPT 3.5, where they were basically trying to get it to do, let's just use the example of spear phishing emails or something different like this. Those sorts of things are trained out of the new model. But in open source models, they do everything basically. So paradoxically, it's actually penalizing the people that are trying to do things in the
But it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense why these super powerful open source models won't be regulated. Anyway, again, the news is the EU have made some steps towards regulation.
And the UK did Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. But the UK and other jurisdictions are probably going to replicate a lot of this, to be honest with you, because it's the easiest way to do it. So you may see a lot of this flow through into a UK law as well. And the US are sort of having their own conversations. Now, speaking of open source models, so Meta have also launched an audio box. This is what they call a foundational audio model. And this is really interesting, it can generate speech and sound effects. So if you've ever, like me, made YouTube videos, or you like making videos, you use stock images, stock video, and stock audio and stock sound effects. Whereas now you don't have to again. So you can create by providing a sound. You can then sort of change that sound using prompting, or, and this is a bit, I haven't used this yet. I haven't seen it actually in action, but generate speech. Now, while that's different from a text to speech model, I don't fully understand, but you're now seeing that, again, going back to this multimodality, you're seeing models that almost do anything to anything.
It's powerful.
And Meta, but on a roll. So you may know a few months ago, we talked about Meta launching their partnership with Ray-Ban. So, you remember the Google Glass that no one really liked, but now the Ray-Bans are actually pretty good. I might actually get a pair, Aalok, actually. But the Ray-Bans have the sort of the Meta models built into them. And what's interesting now is that you can now actually ask, because before you couldn't do this, you can now ask it to, whatever you're seeing in your peripheral vision, you can ask it to give you feedback. So you can look at something and say, what on earth is that? Or what are the ingredients in this? Or how do I make this dish? And it'll tell you. So you're now seeing that the kind of the image models that we're used to now, getting more and more used to, are going to be available inside glasses.
I mean, it's brilliant for accessibility, people with poor vision and different things like this. Like, yeah, and also like we're moving to this whole augmented world where we'll have our knowledge layer on like everything we want to see. Like you're looking at a restaurant and you can see like what the reviews are straight away on Google, and all this stuff's going to kind of come, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good point. If you could combine that with AR, augmented reality, it's quite powerful. And the use cases in business, they're not super clear yet. But you can imagine, people doing stock takes or walking around, storerooms or a shop or whatever it might be.
Fix a piece of equipment, you can see the manual right next to you potentially, or you've got like, for example, like the last time you serviced that piece of equipment, or all that kind of stuff, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. So when Meta sort of went all in on the sort of the metaverse, I was a bit skeptical about that. But I think that with their kind of AI, the open source models, AR, the glasses, eventually we will end up, roaming around the metaverse. It's probably a timing issue for them, but they're definitely making great strides.
They'll have AI contact lenses. And then now that you don't need to wear glasses, will you wear the augmented reality contact lenses when they come out? Probably.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I've spent a fortune getting rid of my my eyes lasered, and I go out and buy some flipping Meta Ray-Ban glasses, big chunky sunglasses, so I can ask you how to make a pizza. Anyway, welcome to my world. And then the one that I haven't used it yet is because I haven't got access to it. I'm still waiting to get access, even though I am paying Elon Musk a bit of money for my blue tick, which I used to have for free. It's XAI, and Grok. So XAI is Elon Musk's AI business. He's now raising 1.1 billion in fresh capital for it. So he's quite serious about building it out. Grok's now become available for Twitter. I think Twitter subscribers initially, but I don't have it yet. Maybe it's just in the US. X. X. Now he's already put in about 140. For investors to invest 135 million. So Grok is supposed to be, and people I've seen use it. I'm involved in a few communities in the AI and AGI communities. It tends to answer questions almost about anything, but it can be a bit tongue in cheek when you ask it how to cook up some drug or make a dirty nuclear weapon. So it'll come up with some sort of clever answer without actually giving you the answer. So Grok's an interesting one in terms of that continuum, that spectrum of models for different people. And then X.AI, the large language model, is being trained on X, on what was Twitter. So that's going to be an interesting base to train your large language model on. So it's going to be really interesting to see how people interact with these different models. But Elon Musk is quite serious about that. And Grok's quite serious about trying to be a rival to Google Gemini and ChatGPT, and be a bit more sort of open to conversations, where you'll find if you use OpenAI and ChatGPT that it will avoid a lot of conversations or a lot of images that you might want to create, and not for nefarious reasons, but it looks at it and think, well, hang on a minute, that's borderline, it'll stop you from doing it. Right. So that was we think the AI for business news over the last sort of 10 days, usually 7 days, but 10 days this time. So there's still a lot going on. And again, all of this is building into this exponential curve, the kind of bottom of it where it's kicking off, where you're seeing more and more things happen. It doesn't seem to be slowing down. And as we always say, next year, I think next week, this will be our last pod, we're going to try and do some forecasts for 2024 and perhaps beyond. So implement AI. I mentioned in the news, we are now an 11 Labs partner as well, also NVIDIA partner and a Microsoft AI partner and a Microsoft Startups partner. So we're building our partnerships. Haven't downloaded our white papers, please do. The AI Assisted Organization. There's another great one on AI agents, so how to augment your workforce. And what we're seeing from clients is that's becoming more and more important. That's what they want. And what I keep saying is, 1-2 years down the line, if you're not augmenting, supporting your team with this technology, why the hell are they going to come and work for you? So it's becoming a competitive advantage. Yeah, exactly. Becoming a competitive advantage in talent acquisition as well. Sign up for the AI Insider newsletter as well. We've got 3 questions we ask you now about, are you interested in training? So our training business is growing very, very quickly. People realize that training often is the first step. So are you interested in training or general sort of knowledge about AI, or do you want to get started and crack on with implementing in your business as well? So if you haven't done any training yet, whether it's AI fundamentals, whether it's prompt engineering, whether it's about how to create content or analytics. We have a course almost for everything. And we're looking at getting those CPD accredited, aren't we?
Exactly. And also like the government actually took the time to put together a framework for what is required to upskill different people. So our courses are going to be complying with the Office for AI's recommendations to upskill your team. So never been a better time to get your team on board, because honestly, like if you're not using it, you're actually de-skilling.
Yeah. And our courses are very practical. So they're interactive. There's a trainer. It's not just watching a video, right? They're practical, and they are more attuned to and focused on how to use it in your business. Not just, talking about AI safety. It's not esoteric. It's actually practical and actionable. And then if you haven't started yet, what people are starting with is our AI Activate 60-day sprint. So it's policies, it's guidance, it's automating a workflow, creating an MVP or a proof of concept, whatever you want to call it, and then working with you to work out how do you go from being maybe no AI or very little AI to an AI-assisted organization within 1 or 2 years. And the key is to start doing that before your competition does. That's our day job.
Exactly. And then with it, like larger organizations, we have our AI Advantage program where we actually do deep dives into the data and help uncover and unlock different exciting opportunities. So yeah, something there for each company.
And we're doing more of those. And what's interesting is that I think that large organizations are always a bit more slow, there's a few more hurdles to get through, but large organizations are realizing that given the data they have, the size of their customers, that their cost base, their growth project, the opportunity to create value is very, very real. So we're doing more of the larger programs as well. Right, so that's implement AI. So let's move on to this week's theme. So we've talked through just this week several new models. Large models, audio models, smaller models. Google have launched a Nano, Pro, and Ultra, 3 different size of models. Talked about Grok, but there's a proliferation of models, both proprietary ones and increasingly open source models. If you ever use Hugging Face, you can go on there. There's thousands of models actually doing lots of different things. But we're going to talk really and focus on the larger models people are used to, you can access, and also perhaps even pay for as well. So we've got a bit of a list here. So let's start with the obvious one.
So just one step before that. The question isn't which LLM. The question is which LLMs. Because basically, what you're going to have is a spectrum where you're going to want things which are like without internet or speed or no communication needed to an API. Let's just say you've got a use case where you want a lot of people to use it and it's not so complicated and you can tune it. Good open source model could be excellent in those cases, and you won't keep getting charged for open AI, questions. On the other side, if you've got like very complex issues or problems that need to be solved, GPT-4 is in a class of its own. There's no other system that's kind of come close to it, although there are some Chinese models and some other ones which are coming close to that. So there's a spectrum. So the key thing to think about is like, where are you going to be using it? Is it going to be like an offline device? Is it going to be a mobile device? Is it going to be like a website? It's going to be like a kind of smart system with a camera, where it's going to be. So that's the question to think about, because it's going to be which LLMs. That's the thing to think about, basically.
No, that's a very good point. I don't think either of us use one model, because they do different. They're good at different things. Now you are seeing things like ChatGPT and Gemini, where they're becoming very powerful and multimodal. They can do lots of different things and cover quite a lot of ground. But even then, and we'll talk about a few now, there are particular use cases where you want to do something different. You might have a much larger context window, like you say, something which is on a sort of an edge device or a watch. Different styles of answer. It's quite interesting as well if you use some of these platforms where you try the same prompt or the same question in a different model and just learn and see what the responses are. But let's get on a list. We've got a list here we've kind of put together. We're not going to do every one of them because we'll be here all day. But we're going to start with GPT-4, GPT-4 Turbo, the new one, which is OpenAI. So this is the one I tend to use the most. I tend to use it for ChatGPT Plus. We use it for clients using the API because there's lots of different things. You've got different models. You can access DALL-E. But on the front end, where you're using the kind of the OpenAI interface on the web, like say GPT Plus, ChatGPT Plus, then this covers most ground. And I still think, and although Google Gemini have had this comparison against Ultra, it was Ultra against 4. It wasn't Ultra against ChatGPT 4 Turbo. So there might not be much in it. But I become personally more used to using ChatGPT 4 Turbo.
Yeah, I agree. It's very powerful, and it's got all the different elements within there. So if you're trying to look at something which is, let's call it like the most complex use cases, then that is a good one where it can do lots of different things, and it can browse the internet, and it's got different elements within there. So that's like a good general purpose foundation model, and like a very high quality one. It's the highest quality one at the moment.
And if you're not using ChatGPT Plus as an individual to talk, I mean, I don't think Aalok talks to anybody else now, to talk to bounce ideas off, strategy, build. We've been going through our business plan, haven't we? We've been sort of going through the business plan and asking it questions about reverse engineering stuff.
I was giving it website, I was giving it a paper, I was giving it different information. It's
fantastic. So if you're not using it yet, then you should be. So the next one is again, it's OpenAI again. It's a GPT, but it's 3.5. So this is the one it's a precursor to 4 and then 4 Turbo, and you can use it again in the chatbot, and also you can use the API as well. So this is cheaper. It's faster, and it does most things you need it to.
The cheaper really applies to like business applications, right? So if you're trying to build a system which is going to have some intelligence in it, and then every time that it asks, the OpenAI for some more answers, that's where it gets cheaper and faster. So the complexity of answer isn't as high, but for most situations, for it's summarizing, analyzing, understanding different elements within it, it's very good, basically, so that's the 3.5.
And even if you're using ChatGPT Plus in the chatbot, the interface, it's just faster. So if you ask it to write a large document, you'll see that the text appears a lot faster than it does using a ChatGPT 4 Turbo. So that's the fast one, and it will do 80% of what you need a model to. Next one we've touched upon again, because it's the only other really multimodal model, is Google Gemini, and we've touched upon that already, so to go into huge detail. But again, the difference with ChatGPT and OpenAI is that they say this is built from the ground up as a multimodal model. It's not different models, one that's text-based, one's image-based, one's video, and then combining the three. So when you prompt it knows, oh, hang on a minute, this is text, this is video, this is image. It goes off to do a separate thing. Google Gemini apparently is built multimodal ground up. Now, Google have to get this right, and they will get it right. And it looks like the Ultra is very good. It's just a lot of people just make a lot of noise about, is it just quite as good as OpenAI and ChatGPT? To some extent, who cares? These are extremely powerful models. We haven't really used Gemini yet at all in terms of the back-end to build applications. It's kind of still locked within a kind of a framework. So we tend to use OpenAI's APIs more than Google or any other ones because they're easy to access,
or Llama,
or Claude or Llama as well. So that's Gemini. Another one really which we have used is Meta's Llama 2, another fantastic model, open source as well, and very versatile.
Yeah, it's very powerful. There's a word version with vision already as well. And so you can have like a very fast general purpose model. The thing with those is because they don't have to connect to the internet. I mean, like they can answer very, very quickly, basically, right? Like, you can run them privately for your own instance. And again, that means that if you've got lots of users using it, you're not going to run up a huge bill from OpenAI or someone like that. So Llama 2, is a very good model, basically.
And it's fast, isn't it? We've used one of our own applications, and it's just fast. If you're using, Gemini or Bard or ChatGPT, you're used to a certain pace of how these things generate text. You use some of these other open source models, especially if they're sitting on your own infrastructure, and they're just super fast. It's like mind blowing. So that's Llama 2. Another one we use quite a lot, and it's quite funny. It had a very large context window, and then ChatGPT 4 Turbo came out, 130,000 tokens.
I see you, and
then Claude went to 200,000. Now, to some extent, in most cases, whether you've got 130,000 tokens or 200,000 tokens, doesn't really matter. It's more the quality of the output. And what Claude is very good at, especially if you know to prompt it properly, hence we do our prompt engineering courses, because sometimes these things can use information resolution in the middle of large documents. So if you hide, a clause in a very, very large document and upload it and ask questions about that particular piece of information, sometimes it can miss it. So you need to be aware of that. But Claude is very good at lot of context if you need it, but also generating longer documents. You'll find that if you use ChatGPT sometimes, it kind of runs out of steam after about 500 words.
Yeah, and sometimes I found that like even with GPT, I think I shared with you, like I put like I was getting it to critique an email, and I put like the screenshot of the email on, and it was misreading some of the stuff in GPT from the actual email. But like I find Claude very, very good for like business purposes, and the quality of summarization and the different elements from within there are very good as well.
Yeah. Claude, if you haven't used Claude, it's Claude 2 now, it's definitely worth going and have a look at. A bit like ChatGPT as well. We use the API more, but you can. I've signed up for the paid version as well. So you can, there is a paid version now, which is worth having a look at. And I'd say that ChatGPT and Claude are the ones we use the most, although I'm going to have a much more of a play now with Gemini. Next one really is, it's not really, it's launched, but not really available yet, is Amazon's Q. So this is it's tailored for business applications. It's more kind of, and Amazon's got this enormous base of customers using AWS. They need to make sure that those workloads don't disappear to Azure or somewhere else. Yeah, because they're AI enabled. So they need to make sure that's why they're building these very, very large, powerful models. So Amazon Q is tailored more for business applications. So it's allowing you to talk to your documents, understand what you've got sitting up there in the cloud. Haven't really accessed it yet, but that's something which is, keep an eye on Amazon, because again, just like Google, they have to be a player in this game. Otherwise, AWS is going to have a problem.
They grew because of AI, like the whole personalized storefront and everything like that. Like they've been doing this for a long time.
Machine learning, and they've had machine learning capabilities in AWS for years. Not cheap, but they've been there. Now, some other ones which you probably never heard of is there's one called Mistral. So they've just raised over $415 million or something like that in a Series A round of finance, which is just, again, insane. And again, that's another LLM, which is very, very fast. And the beauty of these models is, and we'll talk about, it's a bit like Grok. We've mentioned Grok. Grok's not in this list, but Grok's another one where they will answer almost any question. They're kind of less laissez-faire. They're kind of free speech, carefree, they call it. And they've got this kind of hacker attitude. So some of these models, the people that make them are very nervous about what they're going to be used for. Whereas some of the models, and this is probably right to some extent, as long as there's some regulation around it, they're much more laissez-faire. They will respond to anything you ask them, anything you ask them to do.
This one's from a French team, so it's very good with like French, Italian, some European languages and everything like that. But at the same time, also, it's, very powerful, and it's not got any nothing has been gated off. So it's an open source model. And I
is it nothing? So could you ask about adult content?
I haven't tried, but like,
good answer. Good answer.
But I'll leave that for you.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if Grok lets you do that. That's so. Let's face it. There are people who have businesses in, let's say, adult entertainment or gamma, whatever it might be. They want to generate content. A lot will run away from it, but some of these models won't. And also, there's another good point you made, Aalok, is that most models expect you to engage them in English. Yeah, that is the language of large language models. So if you're not used to working English or don't want to, finding models that are designed to operate in your language are better.
This model also has a very different, slightly architecture. It's called the MOE, Mixture of Experts architecture. And I think this is actually the way that a lot of things are going to go, where it's not going to be like one intelligent system necessarily. I mean, this is one system with different layers doing different bits, but there's going to be a way that we're going to go towards this kind of like agent or this kind of team approach, where there's going to be different AIs specializing in different things and helping in that way. So Mistral works very, very fast. And I used it on the Perplexity's playground. So like we're coming to that one now, isn't it? Like Perplexity AI.
That's the last one. Let's talk about that. Perplexity AI, which is fantastic. So you used it recently, haven't you?
It's so good. It's so good. So they've got their own LLMs, which are trained for like some of their search data. So basically they're like the next Google, let's call it that, right? So Google has let you search, you get 10 blue links. They think people need more than 10 blue links. So they created a search engine, which is basically a cross between ChatGPT and Google. So you can ask any kind of question, it will answer for you, but it will also give the references, which are different web pages. And personally, I'm finding that so much better for like research, but they've got their own LLMs, which they've created, which you can access via API, which are very helpful and very accurate. But then they've also got all these other ones like, Mixtral and different ones like this in Llama within their playground. So if you actually go to the Perplexity Lab playground, you can actually test these different models and ask the same question to different ones, because you can just click out which LLM you want underneath it. So that's actually a very good and very fast way to get a feel for like what these different models are like.
Yeah, Perplexity, again, as Alok was saying, very good for research if you want to make sure that you capture all the various sources and where this information is coming from, which is going to be a huge problem in the future, because you won't be able to rely on any content whatsoever, whether it's real, whether it's tech, whether it's written, whether it's audio, whether it's video.
Pre-2022 or something like this, or pre-21 or something.
Yeah, but provenance in terms of where this content is coming from, these answers, is going to become really important. Make sure it's not just some hallucination as well. So that's our list. That's the list we think are the ones that are most worth going to spend some time with and using, and the ones that we tend to use. Or I haven't used Mistral myself, and Amazon Q is not quite available yet, but it will be to corporates very, very soon. And then the other ones are, you've got Microsoft, you're going to have Copilot. I'm not entirely sure sitting here right now whether that's a Microsoft LLM, or I think they are using OpenAI, aren't they?
But they're releasing more actually, and they're under investor pressure to show that like they have spread bets, not just OpenAI, after that whole debacle that happened afterwards. Actually, so they're actually releasing quite a few models of themselves.
Alex, you're right. What you said is absolutely right. So go for those lists, play with them, and you'll find you'll probably need 1 to 3 models to do what you want it to do, no matter what you want to do.
You'll have like one general purpose, which will be like your go-to. A bit like yesterday, I was working with GPT-4 and with Piers, and we were like, it was almost like a third partner that we were doing the kind of meeting with, isn't it? Like to go through the business plan. The second type you'd want is if you've got some business applications, you'll need something which has an API, which can then be answering things very quickly. So depending on the use case, you might have different ones that you might prefer to use. And then the third one is like if you've got applications which you want to run fast without internet, or with internet, but just not be limited by usage or billing, then that's where you want an open source model. So really, there's the kind of the 3 things. There's like the general day-to-day, there's your API type one, and there's your kind of like, let's call it offline or like private type interface type model.
Yeah. So let's get on to AI of the week. Now, we've been focusing the last couple of weeks on audio. So, we're entering a world, as I keep saying, about, real-time voice. So real-time conversations with a large language model. You're looking at 100 or 200, maximum 300 milliseconds in terms of response time. And something we've been looking at is DeepGram, isn't it? So talk us through DeepGram. I think that's our AI of the week.
Exactly. So I think that the whole thing here is like phone calls, inquiries, speaking to someone. It all requires speech to text. So then the system can transcribe it. That's what DeepGram does very, very well. And then the whole point is the faster it can do that, the faster you can then have that the AI talk back to you. Because if you're using like an open source AI, LLM, it doesn't need much processing time, and then it can like stream back, for example, 11 Labs speech or something to you. So the faster you can have like an agent, which could, let's say, do gardening support or something like this, or different areas, you're going to have like essentially like a live AI agent that can help people in almost real time.
And we're talking about, we're going to talk about 2024 and our sort of our bets for the year. But one of them, 2024 and beyond, is going to be that real-time voice powered by these models is going to change the customer service game completely.
Yeah, there'll be 2 things. Like that's one of them. The voice everywhere is going to be like a massive thing, and intelligence everywhere. Any place you've got a white box to type text, there's going to be an LLM helping you.
Or devices. Still waiting for Alexa to get its act together. But that's coming. So that's our AI of the week. It's been voice related. So if you haven't signed up for our AI Insider newsletter, please do. We've got, there's a couple of thousands now people sign up. So that's growing really, really quickly. That's fantastic. But please do download our white papers. And really importantly, if you enjoy this pod, and we try and make this as relevant to business as possible, unlike all the other ones, really, to be honest with you, please do rate it, especially on Apple. It does help us to get the message out. So if you do enjoy it, and also if you like the video version of it, next year we're going to kind of up the game on this in terms of having guests, having more demos as well. So there'll be more production involved. So please do go onto YouTube and subscribe and like it. And that's it for this week. That's the AI Assisted Organization podcast. We'll see you the same time-ish. We get our act together next week, and we're going to be talking about our bets and our forecast for 2024.
See you then.